Hey guys, Ollie here from Local Knowledge, and today I want to talk to you about what we call the finesse rig. And when I say finesse rig, I'm talking about a rod, a reel, a line, a leader, and a hook that we use when our fish get picky or we're catching smaller fish. When I say smaller fish, I mean 10 to 40 pounds. It's not all giant tuna every trip we go out, and a lot of times we are chasing these smaller tuna because it's fun and it gets us kind of back to our roots. So I kind of wanted to let you know what we're using in that situation. And aside from just catching tuna, this rig works great for Dorado, small yellowtail, a lot of other things. But this just kind of gets away from the conventional thinking of throwing 40-pound, a big hook, a live sardine, because a lot of times our fish simply won't eat that. We've talked about it a million times. One of our biggest blessings for this great tuna cycle that we're having now in Southern California is the fact that there's so much bait. One of the biggest curses that we have of this cycle is the bait. And the reason that I say that is the same bait that brings them here also makes it really hard to trick them and get them to switch over to eating a sardine, because a lot of that anchovy is so small you could never put a hook in it or get it to swim. So let's talk about rigs that I'm gonna use in this situation. When we gotta scale down, I obviously wanna have a lighter rod. The lighter rod allows me to flip a bait, further, and also it gives me the ability to fight that fish, not pulling on it with a broomstick, and have a good time doing it, because that's what we're out here for, right? So I've got a few different setups, and I mean, these are literally straight off of the boat. They still got scales and stuff on them from the end of last season when we were chasing a lot of those small, medium fish. This would probably be my first choice personally, but there's no wrong way to do it. This is a Penn Torque 12. You can see it's a little tiny star drag. They don't make these anymore, but they do make a Fathom star drag. We have these, I'm not getting rid of them. I love them, great reel. Now I've got it spooled with usually 60-pound braid. Sometimes I'll go down to 50 just to get a little bit more line capacity, but really with 60 you're okay. The rod that I have it on, you can see it's got X-Wrap handles, it's got a cool rubber gimbal. This rod is rated for 15 to 30 pounds, and it's a Battalion series rod from Penn. Now, when I say a rod is rated for 20 to 40, 30 to 60, that's talking mono. So growing up, all the rods were rated for mono because Spectra didn't exist. Now, since Spectra, some of those numbers have changed and gotten confusing. But anytime you hear me talking about a rod weight, I'm talking about the mono rating. It's spelled right here on the collar. It's also up here printed on the rod. So this little setup right here, it weighs nothing. A pound and a half, maybe 2 pounds. It's great. This rod, thanks to graphite, has got plenty of tip. It'll allow me to pull on a decent sized fish. And also, surprisingly, if you mess up and you hook a fish that's too big, a 60-pound tuna or something, you're still gonna land it. You just gotta be patient. So that would be my rod and reel setup number one. This is another setup we've been using a lot. My boy Dave, my deckhand, he will steal this one out of the rod rack first every single time. This is a little bit different in that I'm using a Fathom 15 lever drag. This is the older Fathom series, great reels. We also have the new ones as well. But again, right off the boat, covered in scales, this is what we're using. Now this is an 8-foot Carnage rod. It's got a fast action, and this one's rated at 12 to 30. And most of the rods that I'm using for this type of fishing are 12 to 30-pound rods. I just find that it's a really good spot in the gear lineup, and it works really well. This 8-footer compared to, I believe this one was 7-foot, is gonna have a softer tip. And you can really see that tip movement. And the good thing about this tip, again, is that it'll allow me to flip a little bait a long, long ways and give me a better presentation out further away from the boat. 60-pound braid on here again. This is Seagar thread lock. It's all we use. Absolutely great braid. Good thing about this braid, especially being hollow, is if you have something bad happen, charter client runs a fish into the prop, loses half your braid. Not saying it's ever happened to me, but it does. You can splice back in. And so you're not wasting half a spool of braid or 2/3 of a spool of braid. We just do a quick splice connection when I get back home and I'm back in business. So that would be my second setup. Now this third setup is a little bit heavier than what I would really call a finesse rig. This is gonna be a lot of times my standard 20 to 60-pound, tuna rig. When they're biting good, I can get away with this all day. But I will scale this same setup down. If they're not eating anything heavier, I will go ahead and go to this. This would be what I would call my heaviest finesse rig. This is a Fathom 2 25, great 2-speed lever drag reel. Everybody's pretty familiar with them. And then the rod, this is another Carnage 3. This one is 7 foot and it's rated 30 to 50. So with this setup, I'm gonna have 60-pound braid again. I'm gonna use, we'll talk about leader in a minute, but this is a 7 foot rod. This will give me the ability to actually land comfortably, you know, a 40 to 60 pound fish. You really screw up and you gotta catch a 70, 80 pounder. This has everything you need. You just need some patience and you will get it done. Now, let's talk about what we're gonna tie on to these rods and reels. That's just as important as the gear itself, maybe more. I think of a finesse setup, there's generally 2 classes in my head, right? There is gonna be the super picky fish, won't eat anything but the smallest of hooks, and the lightest of leaders. In that case, I've got a couple of hooks set out here. One of these packs is a 1.0 Sure Set from VMC. These are awesome hooks. It's our 2nd season using them. We really love them. Love the big gap. You seem to miss much less fish than you would with a competitor's hook that has a smaller gap to it. So these VMCs, these are kind of the 2 sizes that I'm willing to use when I have to go light. If I've got to go ultra light, I'm probably gonna grab like this setup right here, the 15 lever drag, the 8 foot rod. This is a number 2 Sure Set circle hook. And you can see, if I can pick it up, you can see this is a very small hook. And it's got made out of very light wire. And the thing that you of course, have to be cognizant of here is don't pull too hard. You're gonna scale all your drags back 10, 12 pounds maximum because you don't want to straighten out the hook and you don't want to break a leader. One of the other things that you really need to prepare yourself for when you are fishing these finesse rigs is high casualty fishing. You're just gonna lose more fish. You're using lighter leader, you're using a lighter rod, a smaller hook. You can straighten out a hook if you pull too hard. You can get chewed off because of the lighter leader. Now, when it comes to leader for this ultralight setup, I'm using 20-pound Seaguar Gold. I love the Gold series from Seaguar. This stuff has not let us down. It's really easy to tie a hook in. It's soft and supple, not really springy, and the fish don't seem to mind it at all. So for the ultralight setup, I'm gonna go with the number 2 hook and 20-pound leader. Some guys will go to 15. I'm not one of those guys. The casualty rate just gets too high. Now, if I've got to step it up a little bit, either because of fish size or I find I've got these fish excited next to the boat, like on a party boat, you're throwing a ton of chum and they kind of get drunk and will eat anything, I'm immediately, as soon as I think that's going to happen, I'm going to switch over setups because I want to catch these fish, and a little bit of extra muscle goes a long way when you're talking about these super light setups. So in that case, I'm going to go with 30-pound, probably on this rod, the 25 rod, 30-pound Seaguar, and I'm going to go to a 1.0 Sure Set circle hook. This is a much bigger hook. I know it doesn't sound like that big of a difference from a 2 to a 1.0, but you can kind of see it there. I mean, same hook, just a lot bigger. And a lot of times the 1.0 or the 2.0, that's kind of going to be our go-to. I always fish the light wire now. I just feel like I get more bites. Let's talk about why we're using light wire and light leader. One of the things that cracks me up all the time is guys say, oh, the fish can see the leader. I don't believe that for a second. I haven't been able to talk to a fish to verify it, but in my mind, what happens when these fish get picky is they don't want anything that looks out of the ordinary, right? So imagine you take your sardine and you put a giant hook in its back and you've got some 80-pound line. That fish is gonna struggle trying to swim, trying to pull that big hook around, and try to pulling that heavier section of leader that you're feeding the fish. That is the reason I think that they won't eat it. It just doesn't look natural. It doesn't look like the chum that's buzzing around all the place running for its life. So as the fish get pickier, the bite slows down or whatever, you've got to start going down in leader size. You've got to start going down in hook size. This smaller hook is much lighter than a bigger heavy wire hook, and it's going to allow the bait to swim more freely, more naturally for a more natural presentation. The same with the leader, 20-pound leader, and I use a very, very short shot. Whenever we talk about leader material on my boat, we're talking about 6 foot max. I generally like to keep your connection knot outside of the tip of the rod. So if I have a buddy on a boat and he goes, hey, how long should I tie a leader? From the reel to the tip. That's what I always say. So depending on the size of the rod, it's gonna be about 6 feet on a 7 foot rod and 7 feet on an 8 foot rod, give or take, maybe a little bit less than that. But the reason for the short leader, again, is that bait is swimming with less weight, less resistance, and it's just gonna look more natural and it's gonna result in more bites. So this is our setup when things get picky. Tell us in the comments what you're using. Maybe there's something better out there, maybe we're missing it. We appreciate you watching these videos. Please subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Leave us a comment, let us know what you'd like to see next. Your comments are what shape these videos. Thanks so much for watching.